Hello, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. And well, no, now it is the Philosopher's Garden. And if you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher, psychologist, sociologist of 30 years. And this podcast is not a conspiracy, the handbook for life, a philosopher's perspective. So this is the space where I talk about all the really deep shit while you're driving home from work. And I had an amazing day today. On Wednesdays, I attend networking events. I absolutely adore networking events. I love networking. If I had my real dream job, I would be a professional networker. Now, I have no idea how this turns anything into money, but this is what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a networker. I do want my own network. And that's actually one of the things that I'm building toward is my own network. And the beauty about networking, it's funny because I feel like it's one of those jobs that's always been one of the best jobs ever. It's basically a lobbyist, I guess it would be the most equivalent to. And it's kind of like politics, except you're not there for a political purpose or a political campaign. I mean, there are people who network for political purposes, but it's more of an ethical purpose or like-minded mission, or goal, or statement. And the thing with networking is you basically have to be a people person. And you have to basically be really good with seeing which personalities mix well with what personalities, being able to read people and determining what it is that people want, that people need, and then basically providing them with whatever it is they're all commonly looking to seek. And so in addition to being a professional network, it's really a networker. It's also really a good idea to be an executive producer. And an executive producer is one of those really fancy titles that no one ever really knows what they do unless you are an executive producer. An executive producer is somebody who's in charge of producing events. And you could be somebody who basically produces gala evenings, or you produce charity events, you produce music events. Woodstock is an example of something that was built via executive producers. Anytime there is a band needing to put on an event, they require a band manager is actually their executive producer who calls, makes the booking, puts it all together, makes sure that the music, the sound, and everything is all put together. So technically, bands are a really good example of executive producing, because every time you attend a band or a concert, you are in fact attending an event hosted by an executive producer. So this is something I did from 2015 to 2018. It's absolutely a massive passion of mine. And it's also very much kind of like it goes hand in hand with networking. And to being able to pull something off like that is just absolutely, it's an absolute gift if you have the ability to dabble into this, get into this kind of a field of work, and then execute it. And for me, it is such a huge lifeline to any kind of communication. I'm also a huge advocate that everybody should be networking at some point, because networking is all about building community and then swapping your resources. It is such a vital part of it. So this is fantastic. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, if I want to be a networker, then I have to be somebody important. I have to have a lot of money, or I have to. And this isn't true at all. The networking is for anybody who basically wants to find a community and you want to exchange resources. So let's say, for an instance, that you are a gardener and you want to have your own business. You want to open up your own landscaping company. So a networking event would be other people, other gardening companies, other gardening facilities where they would all come together and swap resources, swap any kind of information at all. And you've got some people who say, well, I have farm tools. And then other people who are like, well, I am a nursery. So this would be a great event where somebody who has a nursery would pair up with or collaborate or do affiliations with other businesses with related interests. So in my field, and this is one of the hardest things to figure out, is your niche. What is it you're actually looking for? And this is your purpose. This is your purpose, and this is your passion. And once you can identify your purpose and your passion, then you have a really good solid direction in where you're heading. Now, a lot of people struggle with knowing what their purpose and their passion is because you've got that life-sucking job of 9 to 5 that leaves you no time for your imagination. We have an education system that's absolutely designed to make us more stupid. And as a result, it leaves little room or time or energy for passion, drive, motivation. So a lot of people see that fuel out, and as a result, they never get their dreams off the ground. And that's why I have changed now, and that's something that I'm working toward, is to give people that, because being able to take a dream and turning it into something fruitful that we're actually driving toward is it's a skill. It's such a vital skill to our importance. So it's something that I'm passionate about. So once you decide, find your purpose and your passion in life, then the next thing you want to do is basically find people who can basically swap resources with you. And when you swap resources, it basically opens up opportunities. And then you create all these different opportunities. And you might have one opportunity to speak on stage. You might have one opportunity to open up resources. And that gets your name out there. It gets yourself known. And it's a really the only way to really get through this stage is to just talk to people. And for me, I found that interviews are a phenomenal way of doing this because everyone loves to be interviewed. I have very, very few people who I have found who actually don't like it. So interviewing is a great way to connect. It is giving you a purpose to connect with somebody. So it's not just a blind random connection. It's, let me interview you. Let's talk about this. And this is where a lot of our social skills stall out, is the question of what it is are we going to talk about. And this is where one of my favorite questions, and these are questions that I post when I'm at parties, is what is your favorite topic to talk about at a party? And the reason why I ask this specific question is because it automatically puts people in a position where they're in control of the situation. Now, it's up to them. They most likely already have a topic that they love to discuss. They most likely already have a topic that they love to immediately jump right on. But finding somebody or a way to segue that topic into a conversation is a whole nother thing. It's like you're holding your breath, waiting for somebody to bring it up. Or you might be one of those persons, a lot of people are this way, where you've given up finding any way to segue into bottle stamp collection and Pongo boards back in the 1990s. So when you ask the question, what is your favorite topic to talk about at parties? You literally are passing them a get out of jail free card for a conversation. They have full control over the conversation. They can immediately jump right into whatever it is they bring up. And the best part is you get to now see that person at their best. This is my favorite part about this, is now you have somebody who's engaged, who's passionate. You can turn almost any conversation into something if the person talking is engaged and passionate about it, except politics. That's just a killer no matter how you look at it that way. So when you jump into conversation with that person, you're immediately put in a position where you can assume the role of student. This is another one of my favorite parts about this, is they are almost always guaranteed to bring up something you know nothing about. So now you are in a position where you are going to learn. And for me, that's like candy juice. Like, yay, I get to learn a new topic. And I get to see this person light up like a Christmas tree. And because of the questions I'm asking, now we're engaged. It's so much easier to just get comfortable and right into a conversation, and then end up, in most cases, walking away with a lot more than you chew off. It is almost guaranteed more. I would say probably 80 to 90% of the conversations I have end up producing much better material than I ever expected. I go into conversations expecting very, very little. I need to stop that. And then I walk away from a conversation with my mind blown over how detailed or how deep I got from it. It was absolutely wonderful. So having the ability to interview people, having an offer on the table, an offer, and I like to use the words not an offer. What I like to use is basically a peace offering. This is for me, this is very, very, it's old, and it's a reminder what an offering is supposed to be about. So I like to call the offer a peace offering. It basically is the I have journeyed and traveled from afar into your strange world of your perspective. I yield from the land of Analand, which is my perspective. I come in peace. Here I bring thee gifts. And this is when I lay down what I offer people. And depending upon the audience, is when I offer them a place on my podcast, or I offer them an interview, or I offer them a free consultation. Of course, I invite them to two of my workshops. I have my Change Now workshop, and I have my community campfire, my kindergarten community for adults workshop on weekends. So, right there, I've got 5 different offers, all tailored to different personalities, different kind of people, so that I almost always have something that I can give people that's going to cater to the wide variety. And these are my 5 massive basic offerings that I give to people, allowing them to step in, experience my world without making any kind of a commitment. And because it's a free gift and they get so much out of it, it immediately allows us to share and experience something on a very beneficial level for either a one-on-one coffee chat, however it goes. So having that available as a peace offering is absolutely a huge part of it. Now, energy is also a big part of this, and this is something I've noticed a lot when it comes to networking. Is there are the old school. The old school is, here is this manipulative formula for marketing that takes psychology and uses it to get money away from people. And then the other is, I genuinely am authentic and I want to help. And we all want to make money. Absolutely. We all are driven with wanting to make money. We're all in a position where we very much want to be financially secure. But when you prioritize money over people, that is an energy that very much comes through in scripted pitches, in money schemes, and in dirty sales. And everyone can feel that energy, especially now when the world is healing. Everyone can feel this. So now it's a question of, what are you really doing it for? And one of my favorite examples in all of life is in Star Trek. It's actually a Star Trek ripoff called The Orville, where they analyze a lifestyle without limited resources. They examine a society without needing to fight or struggle or survive. Everything you could ever need is already available with the replicator. And they explain this timeline in this society, which, by the way, is the same timeline that every society does go through. You see an abundance of resources, you see a shrinkage of resources. And resources makes or breaks an entire community, whether it be a one individual community or 2 people family, 5, 10 people family, a town, an entire world. As resources become limited, hostility and aggression increases because fear increases with limited resources. So now we got to get really creative with our resources being accessible. So in the Star Trek world and in the Orville world, you see this problem completely eradicated and is resolved with the replicator. Now there's no limited resources. So there's this next stage, is the gluttony stage. It's when everyone goes extreme with abundance because they're finally like drinking their fill. And it takes a while after abundance to become more preserved, more laid back, and taking a stand away from that extreme glutton. And when you get into that stage, that's when you start asking the question, okay, I've got everything I need. Well, now what do I do with my life? Now that survival's been completely eliminated from the equation, let's look at a life purpose or passion. Now, this is really where the higher educated, the higher evolved mind will gravitate toward this purpose or this passion, regardless of whether or not you have a survival situation or not. And this is really the determining factor, is the survival mindset with limited resources and scarcity mindset, is that the cause of the scarcity, Or is it something, is it the test? Is it something you have to put yourself into a position where you overcome it and prioritize the purpose and the passion over the scarcity? And that's really where that is where two massive school of thoughts divide here on the subject. Some people will say that, well, if I didn't have scarcity, then I could have the right mindset. Well, if I had abundance, then I could have the right mindset. But the other school of thought is you have to overcome the scarcity mindset during the time of scarcity and embrace the purpose and the passion and prioritize that above the scarcity to eliminate scarcity. It's a trial and it's a test. So there's two different ways you can think about it. Now, at the end of the day, we are still talking about a mindset. So for me, when we do examine the different mindsets, the big thing, the big divide is which one is going to make you happier. Now, I have done the survival, the scarcity, and I have done the I'm perfectly happy having nothing. I have thanked the Buddha for my misery and suffering. And I have also suffered drastically while trying to resist the scarcity. I have lived in fear of scarcity, wondering when I'm going to pay something. No matter how I cut it, even when I received an abundance of cash, that moment, it felt good. I had I can breathe and I can have relief. And within 3 to 4 months, it was gone. And I was right back to where I was. And it's very much you are in a survival scarcity mindset no matter what. The abundance doesn't change that one way or the other. It's the mindset for me. It's the mindset that determines it. Because when you live with purpose and passion, you make choices based off of purpose and passion. And when you live with scarcity, you're making choices that are scarcity based, fear based. And you're going to get a completely different gaming experience. It's like a choose your own adventure game where you are making choices based on preservation and scarcity versus priority, purpose, and passion. And you're going to get two completely different lives. This is where you get accountability, and it's taking priority over taking accountability over which kind of a life you want. So networking for me is absolutely where all the funneling happens. And we put ourselves in a position, because networking at the end of the day is just your community. And if you have a large community, that gives you a lot of resources that you can access when you're ready to make a change. And I am a firm believer that we should be building up a network, an individual network, from the time we are in high school. We should be learning the skill for the rest of our lives. That you should be networking, that you should be expanding your community and bringing things together and building on that. And it's not something that only businesses should do. It's something that every person should do. Because when you bring a community together with your central purpose and passion and you're defining who you are, you end up with a massive virtual community that follows you to the rest of your life. And this is the best part. As you go to different businesses or you change different gears, you're going to have your super followers following you no matter where you go. So that when you say, hey, I've got an idea, or hey, I need funds, or hey, this is what's going on, hey, I'm looking for sponsorship, you've got somebody right there in your back pocket who's willing to step up and say, I can't help you, but I can connect you with someone who can. And that's really it. Is when you push it through, and it's kind of like the Twilight bark that we saw in 101 Dalmatians. It's exactly like that. It's the Twilight bark. But instead of, that's not something you just get the luxury of unless you've nurtured it. And a lot of people will treat their community and their networking connections equivalent to an emergency cash fund that they never bothered saving for. So you can have, and that's it. You can either save for an emergency, and to do that, you take a little bit of cash every now and then and you set it aside, preferably on a schedule. With a community, it's no different. You want to basically network and collect people who are on your team and then put them inside an area that you can say, okay, you're going into my team. You are now officially my team member, and I'll be your team member. So you go through life and you're doing everything you need. Everything's great. Emergency happens. Now you've got this community that you can fall back onto for support for financial aid, for emotional support, for direction, for guidance, for anything. And it's especially when you're in a position where you can help out. Hey, I have abundance. This is over here. This is what I'm offering. It's a concept of, and this is how I like to think about it, is you always have something you can give. You always have something you can give. So it's almost like, what is your gift offering? And then there is your, what do you need? And basically, once you are, and that's it. That's it right there. This is what I'm offering. This is what I have available for anybody. And what I need is this. And then after a while, your abundance is fulfilled. You don't need anything, but you keep offering, because even in times of plenty, you should be nurturing your community. And we live in a society where this is very much frowned upon. Networking is very much exclusive only to businesses. And that is a really big problem. That is the problem. Adults have no idea how to make friends and influence people because they do not know this networking skill. They have no idea how it's done. So I'm going to start teaching people because I love doing it. It's like one of my favorite things to do, because this is really where communication comes in. This is where management comes in. It's where all of it is. And it's not just an expectation of going in and suddenly every resource that you need is there. It's not a formula. It is a deep internalization and comprehension of how to connect with people. And now, I was just saying this to somebody today. You have 4 levels of intimacy, of human connection. You have texting or email, which has got to be the coldest, ugliest form of human connection that there is. It's almost not null and void. It's disgusting. A letter written in the mail is actually more intimate than text or email. And I'm going to put that here. A letter that is handwritten is far more emotionally energized and connected than text or email. The next one above that is a phone call. And the one above that, the next level of intimacy and human connection, is a virtual webcam. And of course, the next one is your in real life meeting and engagement. So, whenever you schedule a networking event with someone, I have this one group I do every Wednesday. It's like twice a month. And whenever they do their power pitching, whenever they come in, one of the gentlemen there is always very assertive with, keep your cameras on. This is a networking event. And it's all about eye contact. It's absolutely, this man has mastered the psychology. Oh, by the way, he's a director. He's a Hollywood director who directed one of Charlton Heston's films. Like, he knows his shit when it comes to this stuff. So every time we go into one of his meetings, he's absolutely adamant about, look, you need to do this with the phone call. This is how it's executed. You need to make eye contact. I've attended a couple of his workshops where he teaches you how to basically increase the quality of your camera work and all that jazz. And it's phenomenal stuff. It really is. And he's the reason why my podcast like cranked up like substantially in film quality, is because of his workshops. So webcam, the reason why webcam is available is such a good way to human connect, is because you have eye contact, you have body language, you have facial recognition now where you're seeing my mouth speak. So it's giving you a lot more information than just hearing my voice or a written hand letter. And then we have, of course, in real life. So when you are trying to break the barrier of human connection, I have found that the only thing that really trumps anything is virtual webcam or higher. Every time. The virtual webcam is enough that it nurtures and it keeps relationships from rekindling. But every time I have had somebody just talk to me over the phone, I almost never hear from again. Text and email is such a sloppy way. So getting them from a text and email over to a virtual webcam is the ultimate goal of networking. Now, if you're already in real life, the goal is to have another meeting one-on-one where you guys can sit down and exchange ideas and then follow up. That is such a massive part of this, is following up. And the idea of following up is start off with once a week and then go down to twice a week. then maybe once a month. I have one gentleman, I think we talked a total of 3 times, but every month it's like "Oh, I need to connect with him," because he's an extraordinary person to just we both value the conversation we have on such a level, it's wonderful. So, we have that, and then I think that covers everything I wanted to cover in networking. I have my own networking community called, I don't remember, it's Operation Imagination, it's, something else. Imagination Nation, that's what it's called, Imagination Nation. So if you're interested in joining my networking community, book a call with me and we'll talk. And that link is just click below and click change now and you can also just ask for my full menu and I'll get that to you as well. That's another really great way to get in touch with me is just, can I have your menu? And I'll just hand you my menu. I should probably just like write out my full menu and that way people can just browse their menu as they want. But it's understanding that networking is something that you should not wait until you need it. It's something you should be doing prior. And I remember this one woman, I met her, and at the networking events, she wasn't peddling her own services, she wasn't peddling her own business. She literally said, I just want to make friends. I just want to make friends. And it was extraordinary to hear her say that. And then I noticed that every person who was networking like this, their offer was, this is the clubhouse that I've got over here. This is my clubhouse. And you're invited to my clubhouse, basically. And that's really it. You have something that's a fun-based clubhouse, and then you've got something else that's being offered. And once you it really is a fantastic way to span out and just spread and get yourself out there. It's really, really a good way of doing it. I have one event right now. It's my Poly Nerds group in New York City, and it's interesting to see how this is going to be different than other things because it's we're talking about something that's live versus something that's not live, something that's virtual. So now I notice that I'm handling anxiety. I notice that there's aversion coming up, and that is a huge red flag that you've got social anxiety going on, that you have a hesitation. You're probably struggling with a buried or hidden fear of something, most likely a fear of loss, fear of gain. So you procrastinate, you put it off. And it could be something as simple as unresolved trauma, where you are afraid of people, you associate pain with people, vulnerability. And then it could also be, I'm not good at communicating. That's a big one that comes out a lot is I'm not good at communicating. When a person is not good at communicating and they put that out there, and then you've got somebody who on the spot has to try and improvise a conversation. That's why I have the what is your favorite topic to talk about? And that is a huge part of it. That is absolutely a huge part of it. Learning how to communicate, but learning how to improvise as well, because that's a huge part of what communication is. So I think I am sometimes I get done with my conversations. I'll get done with something and I'll think, wow, I just covered a lot and I'm exhausted. And 5 minutes will have passed. And I'm going, oh my God, I only have 5 minutes done and I feel like I just covered 30 minutes of material. And then I have this moment in my head where I think, well, what am I going to talk about now for the rest of the time? So I elaborate and expand on just my hypothesis, my theories, my concepts, my ideas until I've completely drained and exhausted the topic. And then when I'm done with all of that, I step back and I think, okay, well, now what I can talk about. And it does come back to social skills. It really is social skills. It's another level of learning how to improvise communication because there's a lot going on when you are basically integrating your logic with stay on topic, with all of your ethics and your throat chakra so that you're voicing all this stuff and you're aligned to your emotional feelings and recollections of events so that you're accurate and you're depicting yourself properly. It really is like a juggling act. And when you're writing, you have the ability to pause, sit back, reflect, think, edit, change. But with improvisation, you're just throwing your words out there on the spot with very little time to talk. So it's very much a fast-paced communication skill. It's very fast-paced because it's also being able to control your own conversation, determining where you're going to direct it. And this is true if you're doing a job interview, if you're talking to somebody, if you're on a date, if you are going to any kind of a social event. This is what every person experiences. And as a result, we stay closer to safer topics like the weather because those don't require a lot of practice that go between observation, logic center, vocal cords, and heart chakra. Instead, you can just repeat. This is why repetition is so much more prevalent than authorship, is because when you get into authorship, when you get into that mindset where you're making sure you're directing and steering your conversation to where it needs to go to reflect everything that you need, it is a balanced art form that really does require skills. And that is to be able to psychologically be safe enough to do this is in itself a skill. It's not something that is, it does take a lot of hours, talking hours that you have to clock in on just to get to that level. And when you don't command the English language, any language, with this kind of discipline, it significantly deters you and puts you in a position where you don't want to socialize because it's such a mental task to try and navigate conversation. And it was interesting because I am a huge believer that a person needs to talk to themselves alone. And at the same time, we are in such a society that is crazy phobic. It is insane phobic. Yeah, I really want to say it's crazy phobic, so that there is more focus and attention on avoiding being crazy at the expense of imagination, that we end up never pushing ourselves outside of the comfort zone. And it's because, and this is absolutely the mental health stigma. This is it right here. The stigma for mental health is so toxic right now that there are a lot of people who are terrified of they're crazy phobic. They are so terrified of being accused of being crazy and therefore being invalidated with any credibility that they just don't take a risk and talk because they cannot risk somebody invalidating their sanity. And that's really, that is what is on the line. And the worst abuse that I have seen this, I've experienced firsthand from medical doctors, that if they are having a bad day, the right words in the right place, wrong words in the wrong place, suddenly you find yourself in lockdown because a doctor has decided to put crazy on your papers. And the system takes care of the rest. The stigma for mental health is so dangerous still that there's a lot of people who are not even approaching it. And that's really, we see this with prisoners. You see this with criminals. It's like are you a criminal or are you crazy? And both of these people absolutely get a stigma so that you cannot function one way or the other. Veterans fall under the category of crazy. And this is something that their society very much focuses on. Our society is huge on this, where if you are a veteran, there's a good chance you've got the stigma of crazy on you and you're shut down. You cannot function. You will not be allowed to function in our society. Oh, they'll sit there and honor you, and then they'll turn around and shit on you in the same sentence because of the stigma. And rising out of this stigma is easily one of it was the most terrifying things I had to overcome, was the stigma. And what I had to do to overcome the stigma in itself, they did not make it easy. They did not make it easy. And it was a turning point in my life when I realized I was finally more intelligent, more educated than I was crazy. When I was finally to a point where when I spoke, I sounded more intelligent than crazy. And I noticed the people in my life, the people in my network treated me completely different. I had professionals asking for my opinion. I had a red carpet treatment rolled out at the hospital. Cannot explain to you enough what that was like. Where 2 years ago, I was held in a lockdown status where they took my belongings for evaluation because one really horrible human being who was a doctor happened to put suicidal on my paperwork when I went in asking for help for something that was completely unrelated. And here I was 2 years, a year and a half later, where I was giving my credentials. No questions were asked, red carpet rolled out. And I got to experience life for the first time in my life without the stigma because I could talk good. That's it. I could talk good. And when I realized that that is how prejudice our society is, that if you can just talk really well, people will revere you. And if you don't meet that standard or that expectation, if you cannot outlogicize the people in charge to the point where, and this is where it gets really disgusting, is there is this is these are the levels of insanity. There is uneducated. Doesn't really matter, you're just uneducated. And this is where they lump you if you are in the 1 to 3rd perspective. You're called uneducated. The 4th perspective, you are either playing by the rules or you're not. And now they look at your gender here, and they look at your race, and they look at your degrees. And if you do not have the right gender, the right race, the right degree, the right education level, you're not going to be anything. Then there is you're definitely more educated than them, but you're not so more educated that they are even listening to you. This is where they start calling you crazy. This is where they start calling you mental. And then there is a blank spot. I lived here for about 6 months where I got them thinking. There was definitely that pensive, that's interesting, but they were still condescending. They were still looking at me as, oh, you're a girl, or oh, and I could feel that, like, that's an interesting perspective you have. And they can't quite put their finger on it, but they don't quite trust you. And then there's the authority right there. And there's the authority, and I want to say it's stage 1. And then there's authority stage 2. Authority stage 1 is when they are interested, they're curious, but they don't revere you yet. They don't listen to you yet. They challenge you at that stage. That is where I was. It was the challenge stage. And then part 2, and that's where I am now finally. This is where they finally say, "Oh, holy shit, you have our attention. We need to talk." And now they're banging down my door wanting my attention. And I'm going, "Really? Because you had to put me through all these other levels. This is just from your stigma. This is all the bullshit I had to overcome just to get to this point." And it was for no other reason other than mental illness. The thing is, the ideas that I'm speaking now have been in my head since 1995. Some of them have been in my head since I was 4 years old. The only thing that changed was my communication skills. Nothing else. The only thing that changed was my communication skills. That is the power of articulation. That is the power of communication. That when somebody opens their mouth, it literally is as if they open their mind, so you can hear exactly how their thoughts move, how they think. And we do this when we interview. We do this when we talk. We do this every time we sit down and we say, hello, I'd love to connect with you. And it's a combination of the energy you exude, the knowledge, the confidence you exude, but it's also belief in yourself. That's a huge, huge part of it, is believing that you are what you are putting yourself out there to be. And I felt it shift. I spoke to a lady today. She had met me 3 or 4 times before, and she said it. She said, Anna, you are different. She goes, you were confident before, but now you're confident. You were calm before. Oh, but now you're calm. You were steadfast before. Oh, but something's definitely different. And it was the difference that I really felt between the mindset shifts was before I knew what I was going for, but I didn't believe it. And now, oh, I believe it. I know what I am. I know who I am. I know my credentials. And that's really it. It's knowing your credentials, knowing your own resources, knowing your own reputation. So it's the difference between walking in a room and trying to convince everybody in the room, including yourself, that what you have to say is valuable, versus walking into a room and knowing that what you have to say is valuable, and that without saying very much, people hear the way you deliver and they go, oh, I should listen to this person. Because when this person speaks, they've got something. And that level of communication is one that is such, it's not something you obtain unless and until you master yourself, you master your community, you master the ability to walk in and out of a person situation, a social situation, and you master command over your own voice and the words you use. And to obtain that kind of work is just clocking in the hours, putting in the talking, and being in a psychologically safe place where you can network and you can do so safely. Confidence is an amazing thing. It is very much a consequence that breeds more success, so that as you succeed, you gain more success. And then you succeed more, and then you gain more confidence. So then and it's this beautiful automated fueling system that just once you succeed a couple times and you get the momentum going, it just keeps feeding you. A lot of people call that abundance with manifestation, and it's similar, but the priority has to be purpose and passion. Thank you so much for joining me. This podcast is not a conspiracy. It is the Handbook for Life, a philosopher's perspective. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.